Hello, and welcome to a new video of the course Optimization in Engineering, Scalar and Multi-Objective. Following the content of the previous video about meteoristic optimization techniques, we will now describe some well-known algorithms like genetic algorithm and particle swarm optimization. Then, we will see some benchmark functions that are usually employed for testing these algorithms, and finally, we will delve into some worked examples. First of all, much of the following content has been created using PyMu, Multi-Objective Optimization in Python, an open-source package developed at the Michigan State University by Professor Kalyan Moideb and Dr. Julian Blank. Notwithstanding its name, the package has great functionalities for both single and multi-objective optimization with meteoristic techniques. It offers a variety of algorithms, test problems, and visualization utilities. Thanks to its modularity, it also allows to customize algorithms for specific problems. If you are interested in the details of this package, visit the website and look at the GitHub page. For instance, thanks to PyMu, with a few lines of code, we can easily visualize a custom objective function, which in this case is a simple bivariate paraboloid. The plot shows what is usually referred to as optimization or fitness landscape, representing the values assumed by the objective function with the varying decision variable values. For problems with up to two variables, the fitness landscape can be visualized in a three-dimensional plot as a surface, or in a two-dimensional contour plot where the value of the objective function is identified by the different level curves. Let us focus on the paraboloid, a convex function with a single global minimum and quadratic y-x relations, and therefore easy to optimize. As mentioned in the previous video, many meteoristic optimization techniques work with a population of solutions that is iteratively improved. For instance, these two videos show the evolution of the same initial population with two different techniques. The video on the left shows a genetic algorithm, the one on the right a particle swarm optimization. In both cases, the population quickly converges to the global minimum. At a first glance, the two processes may appear similar, but they arise from different paradigms. Let us dive into the details. Genetic algorithms model solutions as individuals in a population. Each individual is characterized by its genotype, the x values, in the variable space, and its phenotype, the corresponding objective value y, or fitness. New individuals are generated as follows. First, the current individuals are selected based on their fitness. Then, crossover mixes their genome. Finally, mutation introduces a random factor to maintain diversity. Usually, the algorithm starts with a random population, for instance, the one represented by the blue dots in the figure. Here, the genotype is the position in the two-dimensional space, and the phenotype, the value of the contour lines. The first iteration simply evaluates the initial population, while the actual evolution procedure begins at the second generation. The first step is the selection of parents for mating to generate offspring or children. In the plot, the selected parents are circled in red. The selection is based on the fitness, for exploitation purposes, but it is not deterministic. In fact, points with higher fitness, i.e. those closer to the minimum, are not necessarily selected, thus enhancing exploration. Usually, each mating involves two parents for the creation of two children. In the current example, the population includes 12 individuals. Therefore, to create 12 new offspring, 6 different matings are required. In the plot, each color identifies a different mating. Some individuals may participate in just one mating, like the light blue, purple, and green point in the figure. Others may participate in more than one mating, especially those with the highest fitness. Here, exploitation kicks in. In the figure, the latter points are plotted with both colors of the different matings in which they are involved. For each pair of parents, the crossover operator combines their genome, i.e. their x values. A common crossover operator is simulated binary crossover. Let us consider two parents, P1 and P2. They are combined according to the following expressions to create two children, Q1 and Q2. Basically, the x values of the two children are symmetric with respect to the parents' average value. The key element is beta, which is the ratio between the parents and the children's x values spread. When beta is lower than 1, the spread is reduced, and the crossover is said to be contracting. If beta is equal to 1, the crossover is said to be stationary. When beta is larger than 1, the crossover is said to be expanding. The value for beta star in the equations is derived from specific probability density functions. To further improve diversity, random mutation is applied to the generated offspring with a certain probability. Let us look at the application of crossover and mutation to the current example. In the figure, children are represented as squares, while parents remain plotted as circles. Each color still identifies a different mating pair. Note that the random mutation has already been applied. Consider first the yellow points. Here, the information of the two parents is swapped across the two variables, producing a stationary crossover. Graphically, parents and children form a rectangle in the two-variable space. Now, focus on the light blue points along the x-axis. In this case, the crossover is slightly contracting. The two children are closer to each other than the parents. Finally, look at the purple points and focus on the y-axis. Here, the crossover is slightly expanding. The children are located farther apart than their parents. Once the offsprings are generated, the individuals that survive to the next iteration must be selected. In the figure, again, they have been circled in red. Usually, this selection is based only on fitness value. The fittest individuals form the population for a new iteration of the algorithm. The algorithm proceeds until termination criterion is met, usually a maximum number of evaluations or no further improvement in the best objective value. The steps of selection, crossover and mutation continuously balance exploration and exploitation. When individuals converge toward the minimum and parents become closer and closer to each other, crossover reduces mixing, and it is limited to refining existing solutions. However, mutations still preserve diversity, ensuring a continuous exploration of the search space. Let us now describe particle swarm optimization. The algorithm models solutions as particles moving in the decision space. At each iteration, particles are identified by the current position. As usual, the fitness of a location corresponds to the objective function value. In the figure, each particle is a dot with its own distinct color. Particles retain the memory of the best position they have visited during the iterations. In the figure, this is identified by a cross marker of the same color as the related particle. At the first iteration, it necessarily overlaps with the current position. Alongside individual memory, the swarm collectively tracks the global best position visited. This is shown in the figure as a green diagonal cross, here overlapping with the yellow particle, which has the highest fitness in the initial population. The initial locations of the particles are usually random. Likewise, random velocities are initially assigned to the particles. After the first move, some particles improve their position significantly, like the violet and light blue ones on the left. Others show smaller improvements, such as the orange particle on the top left. Some may not improve at all, like the yellow, pink, and blue particles. In any case, the move is accepted, and the particles change their position, allowing exploration. After the move, the particle positions are updated, and so are the individual and collective memories. For instance, the global best is now at the location of the light blue particle near the center of the plot. Particles that improve their position update their local best, while those that worsen it keep track of their previous best location. Next, new velocities are assigned to the particles for the following move. These are computed according to the velocity update equation. The first term is related to the current velocity. Particles are assumed to have a certain inertia, quantified by w, meaning they tend to maintain their previous motion. Then, the current position is compared with the particle's personal best, and an additional velocity component pulls the particle toward this point. This represents the cognitive behavior. Similarly, the current position is compared with the swarm's global best, and the particle is drawn toward it. This represents the social behavior. The ratio between factors C1 and C2 determines the relative influence of cognitive versus social behavior. Both components drive exploitation of known good regions, but they are usually multiplied by a random factor to allow exploration. Look, for instance, at the brown and purple particles. Their positions were already at their local best and directed towards the swarm's global best. Consequently, their velocities keep the same direction as in the previous iteration, but with reduced magnitude. In contrast, the yellow particle, which was moving away from both its personal best and the swarm's best, has its velocity inverted, compensating for inertia and redirecting it toward the optimal region. Finally, let us look at the full evolution of the algorithm. See how the swarm quickly converges to the good area where the global minimum is. However, particles keep exploring by adding random components to the velocity. Every new change is accepted, but each particle in the swarm keeps track of their best positions and is eventually redirected towards good areas. Again, the algorithm tries to strike a balance between exploration and exploitation. Let us now consider some benchmark functions that are more challenging than a simple paraboloid and commonly used for testing metaheuristic algorithms due to their peculiarities. For instance, the Rosenbrock function has a single optimum at coordinates 1, 1, which is located within a long, wide valley where the objective function varies very little, making the search challenging. For example, the gradient provides little useful information. The Rastrigine function also has a single global optimum located at 0, 0, but features a regular grid of local minima that become progressively worse as they move farther from the origin. This function is representative of cases where the risk of getting trapped in local minima, and thus finding a suboptimal solution, is high. The Himmelblau function is smoother than the Rastrigen one, but it has a peculiarity of having 4 global minima. Unlike the previous case, all these points are equally optimal. This function represents cases where one may be interested in finding all equally good solutions which exist in different regions of the search space. Now, let us look at some worked example over the test function for the algorithm previously described. The video shows the evolution of a genetic algorithm over the Rosenbrock function. Notice that the population soon reaches the valley region. There, it can be appreciated how the balance between exploitation and exploration works. The population tends not to move away from the current position because it already has a good objective function value. This represents exploitation. However, some random mutation components still allow exploration, eventually finding better objective values until the global optimum is reached. Let us move to the application of particle swarm optimization over the Rastrigen function. Here, the power of population-based approaches can be truly appreciated. In fact, although some individuals may fall into local minima, the swarm continues exploring and eventually finds the global one. All particles then move toward it, abandoning the local minima in which they were trapped. Then, let us consider the Himmelblau function and the application of the genetic algorithm. In this example, the same algorithm is applied with 2 different initial populations. It is interesting to notice that the 2 runs converge to different minima, depending on the starting population. In fact, they both correspond to global minima. This happens because standard genetic algorithms are not naturally designed for multimodal functions. In these cases, they tend to concentrate around a single promising region, a phenomenon known as selective pressure, which will be discussed in more detail in the next course. While there are strategies to mitigate selective pressure, let us now consider the application of artificial immune system over the same function. This algorithm is somewhat similar to the previous ones, as it involves a population of antibodies. However, just like in the animal immune system, these antibodies are specialized to recognize different antigens, which helps preserving diversity within the population. While the detailed mechanism of the artificial immune systems will be discussed in the next course, here its ability to handle multimodality can be already appreciated. In fact, the algorithm successfully locates all 4 global solutions without collapsing it into a single one. This concludes our video and the module. Thank you for watching.